Hi and welcome to the next video of the series Blog with NestJS and Angular. This is video 4. In this video we will add a property role to our user. We will add a custom hasRole annotation where we can just put in the role that the user needs to access this endpoint, and so we will add our JWT guard and a RolesGuard. At the end we will add a new protected endpoint for changing or switching the role of the user. The structure of this video is like the videos before. At first you want to have a look at the video outcome, then we write a user story for this, and at the end we will implement the user story and close it. Please keep in mind that I'm doing this in my free time, so sometimes it's not that excessive as it could be. This is what we are building. We have our auth.module, we made some custom decorators, some custom guards, and what they are doing is you're calling this endpoint here that we also added, where you update a role of a user, for example from user to editor or to admin. This is annotated with our admin role, and this just checks first is the user that's calling the endpoint is having a valid JWT that is not expired, that is signed with our secret, that is not changed anything, and then it's checking if the user that is calling is having this role that we specified here. So it's checking if the user that's calling this endpoint is having the admin role. And if yes, then everything is okay and it's executed, and if not, it's declined. So we can look at this in Postman also. So protected role is our updateRoleOfUser, and first we can go and get all users that we are having. And you see we are having here 4 users, and you can see that our user 3 is having the role user at the moment. So if we now update this role, we have to pass in here our authorization bearer token, and this authenticates us as this user here. But we can first remove this and send to request and want to change our user 3 and give him our role editor, and if we send it now, we will get unauthorized because we are not having a JWT that is valid. So if we pass this in and execute it again, now we have affected 1, and you will see that our user here 3 has now a role user, and if we send it again, our role user is having the editor role. And if we try this with and to execute this, we need our JWT from a user that is having the admin role. As always, we start with a quick look at our story. So here we are in video 4, and we want to be able to protect some of our routes with an hasRole annotation. So as a user, you will need a specific role to access this endpoint. And as a technical lead, I want that we are able to protect endpoints with a custom hasRole annotation. And here in the role name, you can put in admin or user or editor, so all the role names that we are adding. So we can protect endpoints, so they are only available for user valid JWT and the specific role. So if someone is calling the endpoint, we are looking, is there a JWT attached? Is it valid? And then we extract the user from it, and we are looking in the database, is the user actually having the role that is needed to access this endpoint? And if yes, then we execute the method, and if not, we deny it. So the acceptance criteria is we should be able to use the hasRole annotation. We want to use the JWT guard and RolesGuard, of course. The user should have a property role, and we want to add a protected endpoint with the role admin, so hasRole admin, and it is a put where we update the user's role. So we don't want this to be done in the normal update request for the users, but it should be a protected one with admin, because if everyone would be able to update their own role, then it's basically useless. So only the admin is allowed to add or change roles of a normal user. And you can see here in the next video we are adding some we implement pagination for some endpoints, or for getting all users for the endpoint. So now we start with video 4, and we can move this to doing. As always, we want now to switch to our new branch, so in this time it's V-04. But first I want to show you something. So we have our readme, and there I added some between the last video and now, so the repository is up to date. So we have here that you will need to add a .env file if you download the code, so it's working, and you have to add your own database URL and your JWT secret. Then I added the video where these things are explained for the database and the JWT secret, and here's a little bit of an example of the file, of the .env file. And at last there are coming all the links to the published YouTube videos. And if you want, you can also, because this is written in Markdown, you can have a preview with Ctrl, Shift and V, and then you can see how it's supposed to look. So now we can switch to our branch, and we can say, or we can do this with git-flow, and we can say git-flow feature start V-04. And here you can say we have created a new feature branch, V-04, based on develop, and if we want to finish it, we can use this comment later. And so now we are our new branch. We can verify this by git status, and we see we are here. And now we can clear the console and start. So before we go into coding, we can have a quick look at NestJS. So I search for NestJS hasRole, and therefore we can use a guard. So if you see, we make a request, that's protected by a guard, and it's only executed if it's passing the guard. So here it says, as mentioned, authorization is a great use case for guards because specific routes should be available only when the caller, usually a specific authenticated user, has sufficient permissions. The Auth Guard that we will build now assumes an authenticated user, and that therefore a token is attached to the request headers. It will extract and validate the token, like I said before, and use the extracted information to determine whether the request can proceed or not. So we will extract the JWT and validate the token, and then use this information to find our user and check if he's having the role. So for this we will need to add here a new folder. We can name this decorator, or annotation is probably better. Decorator. And then we can add here our roles. decorator.ts, and here we can use something from NestJS. We can say export const has roles, we can spread it and then use string array, and the method is set metadata from NestJS common, and we want to set the roles here. Now we want to add some guards, so we add a new folder. We can name it guards, and we can read some of the documentation. So I'm here in the techniques authentication, and one of the first guards, so that's very easy to implement, we can use the JWT Auth Guard. So it is just this thing here. So we can just copy this and paste it in. And we can name this JWT-guard.ts and just pass it in, paste it in, import from NestJS, and Auth Guard should be from Passport. If you don't have it, just npm install them, like I did here. So this should already be working. Then the next thing that we need is JWT Strategy. So we can add a new file here, JWT minus strategy.ts. You can just search for it here again. And this is what we will do. We want to extract the JWT from the request. So this method is just doing this for us. We don't want to ignore the expiration. So if the JWT is expired, we don't want to authenticate the user. And here we insert our JWT secret from our .env file. Yeah, and this is what we want to return if the user is validated. So we can just copy this in. And we have to look if everything that we are doing here is good. So we don't have here JWT constants. But we need in our constructor our config service. And then we can go here like config service get, and we can go for the JWT secret. This is the same as we did here. Config service get JWT secret. We will see if it is compiling or not. And we don't need this here, but we can just add, for example, user, and then we name get the payload.user. So basically we are attaching to the request the extracted JWT, so the payload to the request. And the next and last guard that we need is our RolesGuard, and this will be a little bit complicated. So we are now in our RolesGuard, and we can have a short look here. So now they are adding here the RolesGuard with implementing can activate, and there we have the reflector, and you can see here where it gets from the context the roles. So later we will have the annotation has roles, and it gets it out there which role is needed to access it. And if there is nothing, then it will not execute. But if there's a role, then it will check if it matches with the user role that the user is having. So we have to expand this a bit. This here is very basic, but we can do this service. We will need, of course, and we can this, and objectable is imported from NestJS common, and the activate should be from NestJS not common, but also common. What is here? Okay, so we need can activate. Yeah, so we have to do this. So we have our reflector, and I think we will also need our user service, because we want to search in our database for the user. And probably we are running into a loop because the user service or the user module is using the auth module, and now we are using the user module in the auth module. So we will have an infinite loop. So we will have to solve this later, I think. First we have to look what we want to do here now. So what are they doing? So the execution context is needed here. So we will need this too. And then they return a boolean. So what want we to return? We want to return a boolean promise boolean, or probably unobservable. I think that's what we are going with. We can change this later to what we are needing. So first we want to get our roles. So you remember we have this decorator, and so we need to get this from with our reflector, like here. So we have our roles, we get string roles, get handler. So this is basically the same as in documentation. So with the reflector we get the roles or the array here. And then we can say if there is nothing, then we just return true. Because if there is not a role annotation on this endpoint, then it can just pass this canActivate method. So now we switch, or I will just copy it, and then we can, we have to expand it a bit. We have request, we switch to HTTP. And then we have our user. And then we have to look here where our user is. I think we can log it out. Request, and then we have to look. And we just can return true. So this will work, and so we have to expand this later, but now we have to look what we are actually doing here. Now we can go into our user module and just annotate one of the controllers with it to check if everything is working. So we can just annotate the get endpoint. And we can say it has role. And here we want to use our guards. And this is the JWT Auth Guard and the Roles Auth Guard. Roles Auth Guard, how do I name it? RolesGuard. So now we have to, we also imported the auth module, and in the auth module, for this to work, we need to add our providers, our RolesGuard, our JWT Auth Guard, and our, how was it called, JWT Strategy. JWT Strategy. Then we can just give it a run, npm run start dev. And look, I think we are running in some errors now. Here. Nest can't resolve dependency of RolesGuard reflector. Please make sure that the argument UserService at index is available in the auth module context. Okay, so in the auth module, of course, we have to import now our user module, and I think we can't do this normally, so we can search for nest.js forward ref, I think, is it? Now, circular dependency, so this is what we are getting here. And this is what you get when two classes depend on each other. So you saw that our JWT, so our RolesGuard is using the user service. So our auth module is needing the user module, and the user module is needing the auth module. So we are like having a loop here. So it can arise between modules and between providers. While circular dependencies should be avoided where possible, you can't always do so. In such cases, Nest enables resolving circular dependencies between providers in two ways. We can use forward ref, so we can just use this here. from modules, where is it? We can just use this. Yeah, I think we can go with this, and we can just say we import it here. We need our config module. Oh no, we don't know because we had it for root. And now we can go forward ref. And we use our user module. You can see what is it doing now. Yeah, so we can go again here with the forward ref, and we can say add inject forward as it is not known. And here we can say forward ref. Again like before, and there we are just using the user service as before, and now we can watch when it's compiling if the error is still here. Clear it a little bit up. And see what it's doing, if we are getting an error or not. I think we should get some, probably, like it. Yeah, so I don't know, did we export it? I don't think so, yeah. Yeah, so now you see now it's compiling and doing everything. And now we can start Postman. And you saw we protected our endpoint get all. So we should not be able to execute this now. So we have here get all users. And now you see we are unauthorized. So this is quite good. So we get a 401 code, which means we are unauthorized. And if we log in now, we get an access token. We can use this. And then we go to our get all users. And we add our bearer token. And we send again. And then we get all. And now we should see here exactly, because what we are doing now is they check, do we have a valid JWT? And the next thing is it's going through our RolesGuard. And in the RolesGuard, it extracts our hasRoles, our admin here, from the hasRoles, and then checks if the user has the role. Since we have not implemented it correctly right now, it just returns true. And yeah, but now we can look, because I said here I want to console log our request. So here we have the complete request, and here we have our user which is attached to it. And this is because in our JWT strategy we extracted the JWT and then we added the user property with our payload from the user from our JWT to the request, so to the method. And so this is now in this request. And so if we console log the user, we should just get the user. So we can save it. Oops, mistake. So we save it. It's compiling again, so it's working. If we send a request again, here, so I think the JWT is is not valid anymore because of the time, but we can make it here. We set 100 seconds, let's just make 10,000 seconds so we are not running into this issue. And we log in again. And then we will get a new JWT which is valid for 10,000 seconds. And we will get it in here, and then we should get it again, and we are not running into this issue in the next minutes. And you see here we log out in our RolesGuard our user, and so now this is something that we can work with. And now we have to think, what do we want to do? We have our user, and this user is of course from our type user. Make it a little bit clearer. And now we want to look into our database and get our user. So normally it is very safe that the user in the JWT is the user that's in this database. But for example, if the token is has a very long expire date or something, or is not refreshed, whatever, then probably the user is already having a new role attached in the database or a new name. And so I would always look it up in the database. So here we can go, we want to return this user service. And then we have our find1 method. And there we can pass in our user ID that we get from our user object here. You see our ID2. And then we can pipe this and map the outcome, so we get a user back, which is from type user. And what we want to do now is we want to look if he is having a role, and we can just name it hasRole and make a method out of it. And then we want our roles that we are having here, or look if the role from our user is inside this roles that he's having. So we compare if our user has a role admin, we will look up if admin is in the roles that we added here to our endpoint. So this admin is now in the reflector. So here, this is our roles admin. And now we look it up if it contains it. And if it contains it, it's valid, and if not, then we will say the user has no permission to do this. And so we can just use indexOf user.role is bigger than -1. And so what it's saying now, the user is not having a role object right now. So this is something that we have to add. So now we expand it with role. This is also a string. And then we need our entity, where we can say we have our column, and we have our, it's named role, and this will be from type user role. I mean user role. So we don't have it right now, and so we will just make an enum. Later we can refactor all of this and write it into our database, but this is like taking a huge step and a little bit too much for this video. And we will name this admin is the admin role. You will have an editor for writing the block content and block entries. We will have a, how can we call it, chief editor, who can publish the blocks if they are finished by the editor. And we want to have just simple users that are able to read a block or to comment or to do something special. So this should be all that we need. And now we have here it's from user role, and we can expand this a little bit. So we are having a type, and the type is an enum, and the enum is from type user role, and we have a default role. So if there's nothing specified, we will have the user role dot user. So now we will get some errors because this is not implemented everywhere right now. Where are we? I will just clear it a bit because I'm not seeing everything. So now we are compiling. Okay, so just start at the top. RolesGuard, yeah, nothing to worry. We can remove this. So we have our user service. And it's in line 64. Okay, type strings and assignable to type user role. Yeah, so this is my mistake. So of course our model entity or our interface should also be our enum user role. So if we save, probably this mistake is gone. And now we have just our RolesGuard. And this is saying cannot find map. And we want to import this from here. And now where we have to return, just say return true, so the error is gone. Now see if it's compiling. Yeah, so now it's working again. And so let's give you a little bit explanation what we did here. So now we have our role here for our user interface, and I think we can move this from here to there. And then in our user entity we just have to import it. So this makes it a little bit clearer that these two belong together. So we have every user will have a role, and this is one of these roles. So the admin, I think, is there later to do everything that is allowed. So for example, he can give other users roles or change the roles, like we said in our story that we want to be able to change roles of users. Our chief editor is there to, later we are having a blog section here too, and then he is able to publish one blog entry. The editor is able to write news, and the user can, like if you're not logged in or if you're logged in as a user, you can read the blog news and you can, for example, comment or something if we are doing this also. And in our RolesGuard, now we are having here our hasRole, and we can look if this is bigger than 1. And what this does is we can have a quick look here, indexOf, JavaScript, and I think I saw one playground here. So we have banana, we have orange. Oh, probably we'll find a better example. Here. So it will return now. We have here our string hello world, welcome to the universe, and then this string here, indexOf, and we are searching for welcome. So welcome will be here, and now it will return the number of when the character is coming. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So it's coming here. And when we search now for something that is not here, it will return a negative, so -1. So when we run it and we try it, we get -1. So if it's bigger than -1, so then it is in there, you see? And so we can just say if it's bigger than -1. And then we can go for has permission, or we can name it has permission, and we want just it to be a boolean, and it is first false. And then we can check if hasRole here then has permission is true. And if not, then we will return our user and has permission. And so I think we can now switch this up to... No, we can't, because we need our boolean here, and we can delete this. And now we can just make a constant log, so you will see what it's doing. Our hasRole. And we can make it a little bit clearer here also. hasRole true. And now we can execute this endpoint again. Let's hope our token is not, and we should, I think, get an unauthorized, because we are not having our role with our user right now. Well, let's say user service find 1. And we have to make it a little bit console.log user. And make it again, and let's see if we are finding one. Destructure property password of user address undefined. User service 54, so we are not here. 54, so this can't be. And if we add a new user and we give him the role admin, let's see. Let's see what it's doing now. So we will have a new user, and he's having the role user. Yeah, so let's think what we are doing. So we are going into our endpoint, we are creating a user, and then we are not setting the role, so we have to set now our role to new user.role is user.role. And so now if we set a new user Thomas 5, and we go for the email, because I think the email was the unique thing, and we go with admin as specified in it, and we should have the role admin here. This looks great. And if we now log in with this and get our JWT, and then we go to our get all users endpoint back, we again get an internal server error. Okay, so let's close it a bit and have a look. We are in our user in our RolesGuard. And he's having an issue at our user service. Okay, so he is not having a password property. So if we are going into our find one, we just log out our user. Let's see what we are getting. So we are getting an undefined. And let's see why it is like this. So we can console log user. And we can see that our user is having another user property. So we have to go for request.user.user init, and then this should work. So now we are forbidden. We have to look. So we're having here our so we get a forbidden, and now we have to look why it is like this. So with what we annotate the request, let's close the dist folder and have a look in our user module, our user controller. We had our role is of course not admin but admin. Or now what we can also do is we can go our user role dot admin, and now it should work. Yeah, now so we are getting all the users, and we see, so we are adding here our hasRoles, we add the admin to our context, and then we are using first the JWT guard and look if there is a JWT attached, and if it is like this, then we are using the JWT strategy, and we extract the JWT from the auth header as bearer token. We are not ignoring the expiration, and we look with our secret if this is right. And then we are validating it and return our, and we add our user property here to it. Then we are going into our RolesGuard, and we get our contact center, our roles from the endpoint, so this here. And we are having here now the admin. And then we check if there are no roles, then we return true, because then there is no annotation on this endpoint, and we can just pass it through. If not, we are getting the request, like with Nest from the documentation. Then we get our user object, and we get our user service, and we find one user. Now we can console log delete this. And we get our result. And then we are having our user here. And we check if the role that our user has here, this user role that we get from the database, is inside this roles array that we get from our reflector here. So if the admin is contained in admin, or if whatever the role is contained there. And if it's bigger than 1, you can see, if we call this, then we log out, we have role true. And if not, we can, then we see we are setting it to true, and if not, it is set still to false. So now you will need to get all users, you will need the admin method. So now we can make it a little bit so. So now this is our RolesGuard. So now we can remove it from here, because this is not necessary, but we want to use it later on our another endpoint where we change the role of a user. There we will need it. And one thing that you have to keep in mind, later we will have another story or another video where we change our update method, because now we can just update one and we are not checking if that the one who is updating the user is actually the user. So we have to do this later, but this is like out of context now. And the second thing is that the user should not be able to update his own role. So now we have to add another endpoint to change the role of the user. So now we add another endpoint, and this will also be a put request. And this will go to id/role. And then we can say update role of user. And we, of course, or as always, we want to return an observable. And this is of type user. And we want to return our UserService dot update role of user. So we will need to implement this right now. And what we get here is we get our param ID. And we get from our body the new role of the user. Or everything that we want to update. So now we say just user. This is a bit simpler. And so we want to give this the ID, and we want to give it as a number, and our user. Now we can go into our user service, and we named this update role of user. We can just have a look here. Update role of user. And we want our ID of the user. And we having a user, and we want to return an observable, also of type any. Then we return from this.userRepository.update, and we update the ID and the user property. So we will just have updating the role. This is very simple, so we are saving us a lot of code. So we can check this now. So you see we have here our users, and now we can make a new request. We can copy this. This will also be a put request, and then we have here the role, and now we see we have here user. We can update user 2, and now user 2 is having the role user, and now we are giving it here the raw JSON in it, make it an object, and then we say role is now editor, and we send it. And then we have an affected one, and if we now get all users, we see which user did we update, user 2. But user 2 now is an editor. So, but what we are doing now is, as we said, we don't want that everyone can do this. So we remove this annotation so that we create it from there to here. And so if we run this now, we should get that we are unauthorized. But if we are getting our token from here, and we also add here our bearer token, then we get affected one. Here and this should work. We can test it again. If we go with user 6 and we make the role now to the editor, then you see here he is having the user role, and now user 6 is having the editor role. And you can also see that, for example, if we add here an A, then it makes an error because this is not inside of the enum that we specified. So I think this is all working. So what we can do is we can add to our next story. We can make another story in our blog project. Video, I think it will be video 6, maybe we will change it. Refactoring of user endpoints. And there I will just add some information, we can specify it later. User should not be able to change his own role. Creating a new user should add the custom, should be the user role. Yeah, so we will have to do this later. So I think this is all for this video. We can now, as always, I will run it again. We will add this postman request here to our folder. We can name this updateRoleOfUser, protected with JWT and role. So you will need a role in the JWT to call this. And I'm adding this to our YouTube blog. Now I export it completely to this. And now we have it here. So we can now just have a quick look if everything is fine right now. So it's very simple. So later what we will do is we will first make all this secure. We can also make this, now we are just having simple roles that are as an enum here, which is not very good. But for the first thing it's enough. And later we can make or save our roles and everything in the database. Last thing we are doing now is we close our branch, or we finish our branch, so we shut this down and we say git add -A, and we made it with a commit message, and so this is video 4, and we say implemented auth guards, custom hasRole annotation, and JWT Auth Guard. And then we can push it. So I have not been setting this, so we will set this and push it. And then we can say git flow feature finish. So what this does now, as always, we are finishing up our feature, so we are merging the feature back into our develop. So these are all the changes we made, and now we are back on develop, and we also have to push this branch. And now we can see that if we are here in our blog repository, we are in our overview folder. You see we are on master. There we are not having our API. Sorry. So here we are not having our endpoints ready. We have our out folder, but we are not having our decorators. But if we switch to our develop branch, you can see that we are now having our decorators, our guards, everything that we just did. So now we can merge it into our master. And of course we want to keep our source branch, so we want to keep the develop branch, and we merge it. And the last thing that we do is taking our story. So we have the @role annotation, we are using the JWT and the Auth Guard, and we are having the property role, and we have a protected endpoint to update the role of the user, so we can change this to done. At last, we have a short look at the next video. So in video 5 we want to add pagination for getting all users. So you can, for example, say we want to get 10 users, and then we get a second page with another 10 users. So you have at the first page user 1 to 10, on the second page user 11 to 20, and so on. So it's easier to display this in the front end later. Then we will refactor the code so the user can change or cannot change his own role, like we specified in the next stories, and we want to do some minor refactorings. So thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.